Welcome to our series exploring the enigmatic realm of unexplained deaths and mysteries. Join us as we delve into perplexing cases that defy conventional understanding, where each clue raises more questions.
The scene begins on a quiet, unassuming street in the Setagaya ward of Tokyo, a place where life usually hums along with the comforting, rhythmic peace of a family neighborhood. But in the early hours of December 31st, 2000, a horror unlike any this neighborhood had ever seen was discovered. A whole family, Mikio Miyazawa, his wife Yasuko, and their two young children, Nina and Rei, had been brutally murdered inside their own home. The questions of how, and more hauntingly, why, still reverberate unanswered through the years.
You know, every time I revisit this case, I feel like I'm staring at pieces of a puzzle, where someone just threw away the critical pieces.
Detective Akiyama leans back, looking down at the file before him, the paper edges dog-eared from years of poring over the same details. Each page a fragment of a story that is both senseless and hauntingly real.
The crime scene had evidence scattered everywhere. Fingerprints, DNA, even clothing. I mean, who does that? This wasn't some slick, planned murder where the criminal vanishes without a trace. No, this person stayed there, ate ice cream from their fridge, used their computer, even went to the bathroom. It's as if they felt comfortable, like they weren't just some random intruder.
The killer's comfort and audacity are unsettling, and it's that brazen carelessness that first struck the investigation team. To the neighbors, the Miyazawa family was just like any other. A hard-working father, a kind mother who taught English, two bright-eyed children, Nina and Rei. And yet they became victims in their own home, their sanctuary shattered beyond repair.
Then there's the sand.
Akiyama's eyes flicker as he picks up a report. The sand, a puzzling detail even after all these years. It was found in a waste pack left at the scene, analyzed and traced to California in the United States, possibly around the Mojave Desert.
Sand from California. Can you imagine? It's almost poetic, except that it adds no poetry to this tragedy. I remember thinking that maybe, just maybe, we'd found our link. The DNA even suggested the killer might have mixed ancestry, part East Asian, part European. Yet, nothing. Thousands of people questioned, databases combed, no match.
And still the questions multiply. The investigation uncovered a key detail. The killer used a sashimi knife, one they'd recently purchased at a nearby store, to carry out the attack. A chilling thought that someone had prepared even minimally for a crime so violent. And when that knife broke mid-attack, they coldly found another knife from the Miyazawa kitchen to finish the job.
I've thought a lot about the killer's motives. A robbery gone wrong? Doesn't add up. There was money left untouched. Something personal? Maybe. But why the whole family? And how on earth could they do something so horrific and just vanish? We checked everything. Everything. It's like they slipped into the shadows that night and never came out again.
Despite the brutality, there were oddly specific traces left by the killer that didn't seem to add up. A pair of gloves, a scarf, a jacket left behind, as if the killer wasn't concerned about covering their tracks, or worse, as if they wanted to leave a part of themselves behind.
I think sometimes about the kids, Nina and Rei. It keeps me up at night. I try to imagine what could have driven a person to do something so inhuman to such innocence. But after so long, I think we may never really know we just know that they're gone, and that someone, somewhere, remembers what happened that night.
The detective's gaze hardens even as his voice lowers to barely a whisper. There are no answers for this family, not yet. Just lingering shadows and an endless stream of questions.
Picture it. January 1998 in the British town of Malmesbury, Wiltshire. Two unlikely heroes are about to make history. Not human heroes, but pigs. Two ruddy Tamworth pigs with a taste for freedom and a sharp dislike of slaughterhouses. These pigs, soon to be known as the Tamworth Two, have just leaped off a truck destined for the abattoir. Little did they know they would become infamous fugitives, The media soon dubs them Butch and Sundance after the famous outlaws, as they go on a daring escape through fields and rivers, evading capture at every turn.
I mean, of all animals to make a run for it, pigs, Tamworth pigs, they literally leaped off a truck and broke through a fence like a pair of swine Houdinis.
And they ran for it too. Apparently, they headed straight into the wilderness like some sort of Piggy, Bonnie and Clyde. The Daily Telegraph even started calling them Butch and Sundance.
Simon Hoggart from the Daily Telegraph took a particular interest in their story, writing articles that transformed Butch and Sundance into national icons. The British public was captivated by their story, charmed by their audacity, and outraged by the thought of them being returned to slaughter.
Can you imagine the local news? Breaking, 2 pigs on the run, authorities flummoxed. Meanwhile, the pigs are out there hoofing it like not today.
Exactly, and they were so elusive. They even crossed rivers to throw off the authorities. Every day, the papers had updates on their whereabouts.
So the whole countryside is out looking for these pigs, and every night the farmers and police must have gone home scratching their heads. Just imagining the absurdity of it is wild.
By then, it wasn't even about the meat, it was personal. It became this massive national mystery. Where are they now? The Tamworth Two still at large. The public couldn't get enough of it.
Butch and Sundance spent days evading capture. Reports came in from locals who had seen them near fields, rivers and hedgerows, but each time the authorities got close, the 2 escapees managed to slip away. They became almost mythical figures, embodying a spirit of resilience and escape that delighted the public.
So they went from being on the dinner plate to national heroes with a retirement plan.
Absolutely legendary. The Great Pig Escape of 1998, something to remember.
Finally, after days of tracking, Butch and Sundance were caught. But by that point, they had won the hearts of the public. No one wanted them sent back to the slaughterhouse. The Daily Mail newspaper purchased the pair, arranging for them to retire peacefully at the Rare Breed Centre in Kent. And thus, Butch and Sundance, the Tamworth Two, spent their days in peaceful retirement, forever etched in the folklore of British countryside tales. Their adventure might have ended, but their story would live on for generations. The hospital was bustling as usual on the evening of February 19, 1994. Nurses and doctors moved quickly from patient to patient, administering care as best they could. But just after 8 p.m, something strange would occur that would leave its mark not only on the staff working that night, but on the medical community as a whole. Gloria Ramirez, later known as the Toxic Lady, would arrive at Riverside General Hospital. What started as a routine emergency quickly spiraled into a mysterious, almost supernatural experience.
Dr. Gorczynski, you should see this. She was barely coherent when she came in, and her heart rate is spiking. They said she has late-stage cervical cancer, but these symptoms, they don't seem right.
All right, let's start her on sedatives and painkillers. I'll draw some blood to check for any abnormalities. But yes, it's unsettling.
As they drew the blood, they noticed something even stranger. Inside the vial, floating in Gloria's blood, were small manila-coloured crystals. Susan blinked, taken aback, feeling her stomach twist with sudden nausea.
What is that in her blood? It looks like crystals, or I don't know, this isn't normal.
It's definitely not normal, but we need to keep moving. I'll alert the lab. Maybe they can figure it out.
As she turned to relay the findings to the lab, Susan suddenly felt lightheaded. A wave of dizziness washed over her, and she stumbled, gripping the counter to steady herself. She wasn't the only one. Other members of the team who had gathered around Gloria began to cough, their eyes watering.
Oh no, I feel dizzy and nauseated.
Dr. Gorczynski, attempting to reassure her staff, tried to step in, but she too felt an intense wave of dizziness. One by one, the medical team began experiencing symptoms, seemingly out of nowhere. Susan collapsed to the floor, barely conscious. Others suffered shortness of breath, some even convulsed. The emergency room became a scene of chaos, and the decision was made to evacuate the hospital.
What happened tonight? It doesn't make any sense. We weren't exposed to anything that we know of, and yet something was there. I can still feel it in my bones. This wasn't in any of our textbooks.
After Gloria Ramirez was pronounced dead, her body was sealed in a special container to await autopsy. Every precaution was taken to prevent further contamination. When the toxicology reports were returned, they left more questions than answers. The unusual crystals, the strange odor, and the toxicity that had apparently spread to the ER staff all pointed to something beyond ordinary medicine. Days after the incident, theories began circulating. Some believed it was a case of mass hysteria. Others, however, sought to understand the science behind what could have caused such widespread mysterious symptoms among the medical staff.
Given her history, it's possible she applied some kind of cream, DMSO perhaps, which some patients use for pain relief. Under the conditions in the ER, it could have broken down, causing the toxicity. That might explain the symptoms, the crystals. Possibly.
I've heard the DMSO theory, but dimethyl sulfone breaking down like that, forming dimethyl sulfate. I don't buy it. There was something else. I still have symptoms that shouldn't come from just exposure to a toxin. It's in my bones.
As speculation continued, another suggestion emerged: mass psychogenic illness. The idea was that the sight and smell of Gloria's unusual symptoms triggered a psychological reaction among the staff. But for those who were there, this answer felt hollow, insufficient to explain the convulsions, the nausea, and the lingering health issues experienced by staff.
Mass hysteria. Tell that to the necrosis in my knees and the damage in my bones. There's nothing hysterical about the scars left by that night.
The theories remain unsolved, with the DMSO hypothesis widely accepted but not fully proven. For the medical community, Gloria Ramirez's case has become a haunting reminder that even in the age of advanced science and medicine, some mysteries remain beyond human understanding. To this day, the name The Toxic Lady evokes both intrigue and unease, a story of a woman whose final moments left a lasting toxic mark on everyone she touched.
On a cold November afternoon in 1970, in the quiet valleys outside Bergen, Norway, two hikers stumbled upon something they would never forget: a body, charred and twisted, lying hidden among the rocks. This would be the beginning of one of Norway's most haunting mysteries.
She would come to be known as the Isdal Woman.
And her story, well, that's what keeps us guessing.
It's as if she came out of nowhere, really. No family, no friends, no past we could trace. When we found her belongings, suitcases with wigs, makeup and, well, the labels ripped off her clothes, it was clear she didn't want to be known. Whoever she was, she went to great lengths to stay invisible.
The woman's body was discovered in an area locals called Death Valley due to its history of tragic accidents and suicides. But Detective Jensen, the man who led the investigation, couldn't shake the feeling that this was something far more sinister.
There was no clear evidence of foul play, but the scene was unsettling. The body was partially burned, lying in a strange position. Her arms were bent outward, almost like she was reaching for something, and there were empty bottles nearby. Whoever she was, she met a grim end. I can't forget the sight.
For Detective Jensen, things became even stranger as they started piecing together her movements. Police tracked her across Norway and Europe, finding that she'd stayed in hotels under several different names. Each alias came with a new identity, a different passport. Sometimes she was Italian, other times she claimed to be Belgian.
You don't just collect aliases and fake passports for nothing. Every new hotel she stayed at, she changed her name. One alias was Claudia Tielt. The next week she was Vera Jarl. She spoke multiple languages, wore wigs and kept to herself. It was like she was hiding from something or someone.
And as detectives dug deeper, they found even more disturbing clues. In a suitcase linked to her, there were unmarked medicines, cosmetics, and an array of wigs. One item, however, raised even more questions. A map with certain locations marked, almost as if she'd been tracking specific spots.
One of the locations marked on the map was a military testing site. That's when the theory of espionage came up. The Cold War was in full swing back then, and the intelligence game was, well, messy. But without concrete evidence, we were left to wonder if she was really a spy or if it was all just a story people wanted to believe. Detective Jensen wasn't ready to close the case, though. The woman's dental records, with traces of a particular kind of dental work, indicated that she may have spent time in Central or Eastern Europe. But, as is often the case with mysteries, every answer brought more questions. In her stomach, we found high levels of sleeping pills, 50 to 70, enough to be fatal. But what struck us as even stranger was the smoke in her lungs. She was alive when the fire started. The implications haunted me, you know. Was it an accident? Was it forced?
The theories were endless. Some believed she was an intelligence courier, betrayed by her own side. Others thought it was a planned suicide, an attempt to escape an unknown torment. Even now, the case file remains open, though the mystery grows colder with each passing year.
I don't think I'll ever know who she was or what really happened. But when I close my eyes, I can still see that valley, her face. Or what was left of it. It's strange how a person you never knew can live so vividly in your memory.
The Isdal woman left behind no name, no family, no clear purpose. Just questions, and the quiet echo of a life that vanished as mysteriously as it had come. The truth may be buried with her, or perhaps it's hidden, waiting, just out of reach.
In the vast expanse of space, mysteries abound, but few have captivated both scientists and conspiracy theorists alike as much as the legend of the Black Knight satellite. Some call it an alien probe, monitoring Earth for thousands of years. Others dismiss it as nothing more than a misunderstood piece of space debris.
So, have you heard about the Black Knight satellite? It's supposedly this ancient alien satellite orbiting Earth. Some say it's been watching us for thousands of years.
Yeah, I've heard bits and pieces about it, but is it really alien? I thought it was just some lost piece of space junk.
The mystery surrounding the Black Knight satellite has many layers, beginning with reports from the 1950s and 60s. This was the age of the Cold War, when tensions were high and any unidentified object in space was seen as a potential threat.
Well, it all started back in the 1950s. Apparently, some newspapers published stories claiming that the U.S. Air Force had detected 2 unknown satellites orbiting Earth. This was years before anyone had launched Sputnik.
Wait, so even before the Soviet Union put the first satellite into orbit, there were already reports of unknown objects up there?
Exactly. That's what makes it so interesting. And then there was Nikola Tesla in the early 1900s. He claimed to have received strange, repeating radio signals, which he thought were coming from an extraterrestrial source. Some people think those signals were from the Black Knight.
Tesla? Really? I mean, that does make it sound mysterious, but couldn't those signals have just been natural radio waves?
Sure, that's one explanation. But people who believe in the Black Knight think those signals were proof it was sending out data even back then. They even have a name for this phenomenon, long-delayed echoes, or LDEs, weird signals that repeat long after they're first sent out.
In the 1960s, these mysterious radio signals were just the beginning. It was in 1998, during NASA's STS-88 mission, that the Black Knight satellite gained its most iconic image. A dark, oddly shaped object was photographed floating above Earth, sparking renewed interest and speculation.
Okay, so what about that famous photo? You know, the one taken by NASA during the STS-88 mission. It looks well, strange. Not like anything you'd expect from space junk.
That's the one. People say that's definitive proof of the Black Knight. NASA claims it's just a thermal blanket that floated off during a spacewalk. But some think that's just a cover story. I mean, look at it. It doesn't look like a blanket.
I admit, the shape does look odd, but could it just be pareidolia? You know, when we see familiar shapes in random objects, like how people see faces in clouds.
Maybe, but others say the shape is too specific. And some conspiracy theorists think that it's an alien probe. They claim it was sent to monitor Earth and it's been in orbit for over 13,000 years.
13,000 years? Now that sounds far-fetched. How would they even calculate that?
It's theories like these that keep the Black Knight mystery alive. Some people believe it's a message from an ancient civilization, or even from an extraterrestrial race. Yet skeptics say the legend of the Black Knight is nothing more than Cold War paranoia, mixed with human imagination.
Look, I get that it sounds wild, but isn't it fascinating? I mean, what if it really is an alien artifact? Wouldn't that change everything we know about human history and our place in the universe?
Sure it would, but there are simpler explanations. It could just be debris, like NASA says. Besides, in the Cold War era, every unknown object was treated with suspicion. Maybe people just saw what they wanted to see.
So you think it's just a coincidence that the Black Knight satellite story keeps popping up even now?
Maybe. Or maybe it's the allure of a good mystery. People want to believe there's something bigger out there. Who doesn't love the idea of aliens keeping an eye on us?
In the end, the Black Knight satellite remains a story with just enough mystery to keep people guessing. Whether it's an ancient alien probe, a stray piece of space debris, or a product of overactive imaginations, the Black Knight continues to orbit not just our planet, but our minds.
The Tamworth Barbershop Ghost is a spooky story from the quiet town of Tamworth, England. Known for its medieval streets and quaint architecture, Tamworth might seem like an unlikely place for paranormal activity. However, one particular barbershop, situated in the town's historic centre, has a reputation for supernatural occurrences. The shop, an old building with Victorian features and a vintage charm, has been said to be haunted for decades, with tales of eerie sightings and unexplained noises that keep locals intrigued. Witnesses have reported strange phenomena, including tools moving on their own, lights flickering without explanation, and cold spots that appear randomly around the shop. The ghost itself is often described as a shadowy figure that appears in mirrors or in reflections in the glass door. This figure is believed to be a former barber, a man who supposedly died under mysterious circumstances in the early 20th century. According to local law, he was a dedicated worker who spent most of his life in the barbershop, and it's said that his spirit stayed behind to keep an eye on the place. Barbers who have worked in the shop over the years recount instances where they felt like they were being watched or felt a sudden drop in temperature. Some claim to have seen the ghostly barber's face briefly in the mirrors, while others have heard soft whispers when no one else was around. Despite these eerie encounters, there is an almost friendly air to the hauntings, leading some to believe that the spirit is not malevolent but rather protective of the place he cherished. Today, the legend of the Tamworth Barbershop Ghost has become part of local folklore, with residents and tourists alike drawn to the barbershop to catch a glimpse of the ghostly barber. Though it's difficult to verify any of the paranormal claims, the stories surrounding the shop continue to be passed down through generations, keeping the mystery alive. The tale has even inspired ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts to visit Tamworth to see if they can capture any evidence of the barber's lingering presence.
Judge Joseph Force Crater's mysterious disappearance in 1930 remains one of the most enduring unsolved cases in American history. Known as the missingest man in New York, Crater's vanishing has sparked endless theories, speculation, and intrigue. Judge Crater was appointed to the New York Supreme Court in April 1930 by then-Governor Franklin D. Roosevelt. Well-dressed and sociable, he was known for his intelligence and connections with New York's powerful Tammany Hall political machine. These associations later fueled theories linking him to organized crime and political corruption. On August 6, 1930, Judge Crater was last seen after dining with a friend and his mistress at a restaurant on Manhattan's West 45th Street. He had reportedly withdrawn a substantial sum of money, around $5,000, nearly $90,000 today, shortly before his disappearance. He left the restaurant, entered a cab, and was never seen again. Initially, his wife, Stella Crater, thought he was simply delayed by work. When he didn't return after weeks, she finally reported him missing, sparking a massive police investigation. Despite a widespread search, no trace of him was ever found. Many theories have emerged over the years about Crater's fate. One of the most prominent speculates that he was silenced due to his connections with Tammany Hall and knowledge of political corruption. Some believe he was caught up in organized crime activities or became an inconvenient figure for powerful people in New York's political machine. Another theory suggests Crater was involved in financial improprieties or embezzlement and may have disappeared to avoid repercussions. Some think he was forced to flee either by choice or under threat. However, no concrete evidence has surfaced to prove this. Romantic entanglements add another layer of intrigue. Crater's extramarital affairs, particularly with showgirls, were widely known. Some speculate that one of his romantic partners or their associates might have been involved in his disappearance, perhaps motivated by jealousy or revenge. A long-held theory posits that Crater staged his own disappearance to start a new life. His substantial cash withdrawal, coupled with his connections and potential troubles, support this notion. However, his friends and family doubted he would abandon his responsibilities or leave behind his life and reputation. Over the years, occasional clues emerged, though none led to a breakthrough. In 2005, a retired teacher from Queens, Stella Ferrucci Good, revealed a letter her late husband had written, claiming that Crater was murdered by organized crime figures and buried beneath the Coney Island boardwalk. This lead, though intriguing, yielded no concrete evidence upon investigation. Judge Crater's case has had a lasting cultural impact. His story became synonymous with unsolved mysteries, and to pull a crater was slang for vanishing without a trace. His disappearance remains a haunting reminder of the unknowns lurking behind closed doors in high places. Without new evidence, Judge Crater's case will likely remain an unsolved mystery, capturing imaginations as a chilling tale of a man who vanished into the shadows of New York's dark underbelly.
The story of Thee is one shrouded in eerie silence and profound mystery. His body was found, mummified, in an abandoned warehouse in the quiet Basque town of Etsibari. Seated on a chair, hands on his lap, his presence felt strangely serene but haunting, as if he'd chosen to wait out eternity alone in that forgotten space. The strangest part? He had no name, no past, nothing that could tell the investigators who he was or how he ended up in that desolate spot. His identity and cause of death remain a mystery, captivating locals and investigators alike.
So they found him just sitting there, like he'd been waiting all those years for someone to notice.
Exactly. Just imagine. Years and years and no one even knew he was there. It's chilling, honestly. They said he'd been there so long he was practically part of the warehouse itself. No signs of struggle, no clues. Just a man, seated, almost peaceful. And the weirdest thing, there was no identification, no reports of him missing.
That's what I can't wrap my head around. No family? No friends looking for him? You'd think someone would have noticed his absence.
But no one had. His fingerprints, his DNA, scanned through databases in Spain and abroad, turned up nothing. He was, it seemed, a ghost. Investigators speculated he could have been a transient, perhaps someone living under the radar with no close connections to notice his absence. And yet his solitary presence in Etsibari, a quiet residential town, felt almost deliberate.
Yeah, and there's no indication of foul play. No signs he'd been hurt or forced there. Some people think he might have just chosen to be there. That maybe he died of natural causes. Maybe even an overdose. But to just sit down and fade away like that? It doesn't make sense.
What if he wasn't alone? I mean, what if someone placed him there after he died? You hear about these things in crime documentaries. People trying to cover up deaths, even peaceful ones. It'd explain why no one knows anything about him.
The theories swirled among the townspeople and investigators alike. Was he a recluse who died alone, slipping away in a place no one would find him? Or was he placed there, hidden in plain sight, as part of something darker, more calculated? Either way, the lack of information became more than just a barrier. It was an invitation for whispers, a doorway to speculation.
I mean, think about it. Someone could have left him there for a reason. Maybe he wasn't from Etsibari at all. Maybe he was brought there because it's so quiet, so isolated. It would have been years before anyone stumbled across him.
But then why not try to hide him better? Leaving him there, sitting like that? It's almost respectful, like they wanted him to be found someday.
That's what makes this mystery so unique. The body wasn't just hidden away in a corner. It was placed, no, almost displayed, as if he was still alive, watching the years slip by around him. And even as forensic experts examined every possible lead, he remained a nameless figure, an enigma surrounded by dust and silence.
Who knows if we'll ever learn the truth? I read they even checked his dental records, but nothing came up. It's like he's a man without a past, left there for reasons only he, or whoever might have left him there, could understand.
It's sad, really, to think of him sitting there for so long, waiting for, what, closure, recognition? I just hope one day we'll know who he was.
Until that day comes, there remains a quiet mystery, a nameless soul whose story eludes every attempt to unravel it, leaving behind only questions and a chair covered in dust.
The stone spheres of Costa Rica, also known as, are a fascinating archaeological mystery dating back to pre-Columbian times, primarily concentrated in the Diquís Delta region of Costa Rica. Hundreds of these near-perfectly round stone spheres, made of granodiorite, which is a type of igneous rock, were discovered in the 1930s during land-clearing operations by the United Fruit Company. The spheres vary greatly in size, from a few centimeters in diameter to over 2 meters, with the largest weighing as much as 16 tons. Their precise roundness and the technology used to shape and transport them continue to puzzle archaeologists. These spheres are believed to have been created by the Diquís culture between 800 CE and 1500 CE. Although the purpose of the spheres remains unknown, many theories have emerged over the years. Some suggest that they served as markers for social or ceremonial gatherings, while others propose that they were aligned with astronomical events or directional indicators for travel. Despite their enigmatic purpose, these spheres highlight the sophistication of the Diquís people in terms of art, mathematics, and stoneworking skills. In addition to their round shape, what makes the spheres particularly remarkable is the mystery of their transportation. The nearest source of granodiorite lies miles away from where many spheres were found, raising questions about how the Diquís people managed to move them over such distances. Some speculate that they may have rolled the stones, but this is only theoretical as no definitive evidence has been found. In 2014, UNESCO recognized the spheres and the Diquís archaeological sites as World Heritage Sites, acknowledging their historical significance and mystery. Since their discovery, many spheres have been moved, damaged, or taken as ornaments, which has further complicated attempts to understand their original placement and context. The stone spheres of Costa Rica remain one of Central America's greatest archaeological enigmas, sparking both scholarly and public intrigue due to the blend of skill, mystery, and ancient craftsmanship they represent.
The Jamison family disappearance remains one of the most eerie and unsolved mysteries in Oklahoma's history. In October 2009, Bobby and Sherilyn Jamison, along with their 6-year-old daughter Madison, went missing while exploring a remote wooded area near Red Oak, Oklahoma, with the intention of purchasing land. They were last seen on October 8th, and days later their truck was discovered abandoned on a dirt road. Inside the vehicle, authorities found their wallets, IDs, a GPS device, phones, Sherilyn's purse, and an unusual amount of cash, around $32,000. The family dog was also found inside, alive but severely malnourished, adding to the unsettling nature of the scene. There were no signs of struggle in or around the vehicle, but the Jamisons had seemingly vanished without a trace. The mystery deepened over the years as investigators delved into the family's background and personal life, leading to a range of theories and speculations. It was known that both Bobby and Sherilyn had been struggling with personal and health issues. Friends claimed that the couple had a growing interest in spiritualism and believed they were haunted by spirits, which contributed to the family's reportedly erratic behavior in the weeks leading up to their disappearance. Security footage from their home showed Bobby and Sherilyn packing their truck in a seemingly absent-minded, repetitive manner, loading and unloading items in a way that looked almost trance-like. This footage has been widely discussed as a potential clue, though it has not provided concrete answers. For 4 years, no trace of the Jamisons was found despite extensive searches. Then, in November 2013, skeletal remains were discovered by hunters about 3 miles from where the truck had been left. These remains were later identified as belonging to Bobby, Sherilyn, and Madison Jamison. However, the bodies were so decomposed that determining the cause of death proved impossible. The discovery of the remains only intensified the mystery, as the distance from their vehicle suggested they had traveled a significant distance into the remote wilderness, yet no clues explained why or how they ended up in such an isolated spot. Various theories have since circulated about what happened to the Jamisons, ranging from foul play to accidental causes. Some have proposed that the family got lost in the dense forest and succumbed to the elements, while others believe they may have encountered someone who led them further into the woods with ill intentions. The case remains unsolved to this day, and no single theory has been universally accepted. The haunting disappearance of the Jamison family has left a lasting impression, and the Oklahoma wilderness serves as a grim reminder of the mystery that may never be fully explained.
Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the unexplained. We hope these mysteries have sparked your curiosity and encouraged you to delve deeper into the unknown. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and never stop seeking the truth.